Welcome to We All Serve, the podcast featuring leadership lessons from and conversations with those veterans that have served in the United States Armed Forces. Meet your hosts, Robert Lewis, a proud enlisted veteran that served active duty in the United States Marine Corps. Hoorah! And Shalom Klein, who is privileged to be an officer in the United States Army Reserve. Hooah! They both agree. We all serve.
And indeed, we are back on yet another episode of We All Serve. These past few weeks have been fun, Robert. We've had some amazing guests, hearing some great feedback from people that are tuning in on YouTube, as well as finding the podcast through Spotify, Apple, Google, all that sort of stuff. And Robert, you and I don't talk about this enough, but there's a lot of podcasts that are out there that talk about all of the challenges. Indeed, there are challenges of service. There are challenges. There's certainly, there's depression. There's unfortunately suicide. There's very, depressing things that people often hear relating to service, and especially when you're talking about veterans leaving service. What you and I are really all about is we are trying to talk about the leadership lessons and glean some advice. And today I'm particularly excited, Robert, because we are talking with somebody. I know you think that I don't talk to anybody that's not in the Army. Today is my way of proving that indeed I do have friends that have served in other branches of the United States military.
No, that's quite okay. And this gentleman served in the closer to the Marine Corps than what the Army would be. The Department of the Navy is what the Marine Corps is, and this gentleman served in the Navy Reserve. And no, this is quite an honor. His service, his duty to country, and all of the things that he's done statewide and nationally is remarkable. And I think, as you remarked there, Shalom, we do not speak enough about, the different services as well. So I'm really excited about today, man. I think that what we've been doing with our podcast is we are putting a real humanized face on some of our serving heroes, and certainly our guest today is one of those.
Absolutely. And I know you are fortunate in your role as the program manager for the IHHC, the Illinois Higher Heroes Consortium. You are exposed all the time to both heroes. You are housed at IDVA, at the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. So I'm in awe and grateful for the incredible work of IDVA and your colleagues, and also the folks that you are advocating on behalf of, but also really, really in awe and impressed by the companies that have become partners of IHHC and have committed to hiring veterans, those that have served our country. So, Robert, I mean, I don't say it enough to you, but thank you for your continued service.
Well, thank you, my brother. I appreciate that. And you do say it to me offline quite often when we talk. So, and the feeling is mutual. Shalom, although you are serving currently, you serve in so many capacities. You thought I was going to take a shot at the Army.
You're going in a different direction. I won't lie.
Not that time, brother. Not that time. No, I wanted to also just commend you for all the great things that you're doing with the platforms you have been fortunate enough to serve with. And I think that it only makes sense that folks who continuously give and continuously serve do have the opportunities to do it on many levels. And so that's what I watch and what I'm honored to be across the screen here that we share with this podcast, a gentleman like yourself who's doing it on so many levels and doing it well, I might add. So thank you, brother, for just having the vision to serve in the way that you do, because you're making a difference, my man.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And
Indeed.
to me, and I know to you, bottom line, if we can impact one person, if we can share one story, if we can inspire one more person to serve, because ultimately it is all about we all serve, then it's all worth it. It is all worth it. So, enough about us. Let's get right to our amazing guest today.
Yes.
Our guest today, as you can see there on the screen, Richard Goldberg is a nationally recognized leader in public affairs, strategy, and crisis communication, with 15 years of experience serving as a trusted advisor to public and private sector entities to help them navigate complex public affairs challenges and public relations crises, both domestically and internationally. Formerly serving in the capacities of White House National Security Council staff, gubernatorial chief of staff, and U.S. Senate deputy chief of staff, Rich has repeatedly proven his government affairs expertise with specialization in budgets, appropriations, foreign policy, national security, and counterterrorism. Rich has served in the highest levels of federal and state government as a policy advisor, communication strategist, and senior executive, and now is currently the principal consultant with RG Solutions. And Rich is leveraging his tactical and strategic management expertise to help corporate and nonprofit companies navigate public relations and political landscape complexities. And very important to our conversation today, since 2006, Rich Goldberg has served our nation as an intelligence officer in the United States Navy Reserves, through which he has been posted as a Navy watch officer in the Pentagon's Command Center, as a reserve chief of counterintelligence threats for U.S. European Command, as a senior intelligence officer and mission planner for an electronic attack squadron deployed to Afghanistan. That is quite the mouthful. Rich, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us on We All Serve.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I heard a hoo-ah, I heard a hoorah, so we'll provide a little hoo-yah now. So there you go.
Okay, there we go. And thank you, Rich, for, again, as I said earlier, for demonstrating to Robert Lewis and any of his Marine brothers that we all serve. We all serve. It's all about service. So I'll talk to anybody. I will talk to anybody about service. So, Rich, such a pleasure to have you. You and I have known each other for quite a while now, and this is a unique opportunity to talk about your service and some of the leadership lessons learned over your time. You've been in the Navy Reserves for quite a while. So, Rich, I want to take you all the way back to 2006, which seems like a long time ago, because it has been, and different time back when we were all face to face. When you decided to direct commission into the Navy, why did you make that decision?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on. This is such an incredible program, and I'm happy to contribute. I turned back the clock 14 years, which, no gray hair and definitely running my mile and a half a lot quicker. But really it was 9/11. It changed my life. I was in college when 9/11 happened. And it really was one of those moments where you woke up and said, wow, the world has changed. There is evil, there's good, there's evil. And there's a time for every generation to answer a call, and you have to figure out, how it is that you answer that call in your way. And I wasn't sure if military service was going to be it. I had a feeling it was. My grandparents on both sides had served in World War II in different capacities. And so there was this military culture that I was brought up with. I felt really like, it was this sort of Second World War mentality for me of, this is the country that liberated the camps, that fought Nazi Germany, that defeated that evil. And this might be my moment as a Jewish American to be able to give back to the country that's now under attack as well. And so, eventually I got out to D.C. I started a job on Capitol Hill with then Congressman Mark Kirk before he was senator. And he had been a Navy Reserve intelligence officer for a long time. And he said, you're already serving here on Capitol Hill in a very important role on foreign policy. But if you want to scratch that itch and do more and serve in the military, he couldn't recommend highly enough doing it, and very much encouraged me and gave me the time to commit to my training and my 2-week ATs and my deployment when it came. And so just an amazing experience ever since. Something that changes your life in a way that only people who have gone through it can really understand. But I remember back being that newly minted ensign, raising his right hand and repeating the oath and giving the first salute. And I did it at Great Lakes up there here in just north of Chicago, in a very special building, very special environment. My parents, Congressman Kirk, and it's a moment I'll never forget. The day I chose to raise my hand and serve our country.
No, wow, that's amazing, and we're glad that I consider you a hometown hero, Richard. Being here in Illinois, and where exactly did you grow up?
So I grew up in Skokie. My mom's from Knoxville, Tennessee, is where she was born.
Sure.
Because her dad was a chaplain during World War II, stationed there at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And then my father's from Scotland, an immigrant who came to America in 1969 and met my mom. And his father had fought in World War II for the British military, and he was a refugee from Germany. So we had a lot of interesting, eclectic, diverse upbringings. But here in Skokie, Illinois, my grandparents lived in Rogers Park, and I went to school in Skokie and then Chicago for high school. Stayed local for college, and then straight out to DC after that.
Wow. Hometown hero, like I said. So this is what I'm curious about, because you've obviously served in so many capacities, different administrations, both here, state and nationally. What gave you your not only your Navy service, but your background, your family, the lifestyle that you came up with? Your leadership skills, man, like how did you hone those, and were they directly from your service in the Navy?
Yeah, I would say my leadership skills, I owe a lot to my Navy service. It's something that's just really drilled into you throughout the training is leadership, leadership by example, what it means to be a leader, what it means to take care of the people that you're directing, communication, talking about needs of the people who are working for you, making sure they're taken care of, making sure people are feeling valued, making sure people are well employed and doing what they need to be doing, holding people accountable when they need to be, rewarding excellence, expecting excellence. These are incredible values that you really learn on the job, and really you learn from the people who you serve under. And if you have good leaders and you learn from good leaders, hopefully you follow their example and become a good leader yourself.
Amazing.
Rich, you just talked a little bit about the learning from the people that have led you, and I know that you were mentored by one of my heroes, Congressman then Senator Mark Kirk, who just before we came on, we started recording. Robert and I were having a conversation. I was talking about the Mark Kirk brand that really doesn't exist much anymore, and he was a hero. He was a hero. He is a hero to so many of us and his service. But I want to actually go on the other side of it. I want to talk about the folks that you have been privileged to lead. You've been in the Navy Reserve for now 14 years, and that's quite a period. I know that many have looked up to you, both from your civilian leadership, but I want to talk about the military side of things. Tell us how the call it the junior enlisted, and now as you look at the Richard Goldbergs that are taking the oath now, what do you see in them, and what have you learned from those that might be a little bit more junior than you?
Yeah, one of the greatest things about the military is that you do keep on learning as you become higher in the ranks. You don't stop learning. If you stop learning, you're doing something wrong. And you don't just learn from the people over you, you do learn from the people under you. And when you start getting older and you start seeing there's a little bit of an age gap between you and the youngest people who are coming into the military, to see the bright-eyed, eager attitude, go get it, I want to make a difference, I'm here to serve, I'm here to learn, it's so refreshing to see that we continue to have so many people who are standing up and saying, I want to serve, I want to do my part for my country. And they come and they're incredible. They put their heads down, they do the job that they're asked to do. They do it 110%. And that's all you can ask as a leader. And I'll say that, one of the things that I learned most of all on deployment in Afghanistan. The people in my intelligence shop, when we were doing mission planning, they're far away from home. They have families, they have kids. They had, basic needs. They need to take care of themselves, make sure they're eating well and working out, mentally healthy while you're in a place where you're conducting wartime operations. And, you learn a lot about yourself in that period of how you treating people with respect, making sure that you take care of your people. And if you take care of your people, they take care of you. That's one of the old axioms of the military that I found to be true.
Wow. Another aspect that fascinates the kid in me, Richard, is when I was 8, okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about my childhood here. I went to D.C. and I saw the White House for the first time, and my parents took me on the White House tour. So I got a chance to, only part I remember really is like the Blue Room or something like that. But it was the place that you always saw on TV. You knew the president lived there. So the kid in me wants to know, after you served in Governor Rauner's administration and then had an opportunity as director of the National Security Council there in D.C., what was that like?
That was really an honor of a lifetime. I don't think there's anybody who comes through there that doesn't think about their 8-year-old self, imagining what it would be like to work in the White House. An incredible experience, the history, the magnitude of the moment, whoever you're working for in any party, especially when you're working in a national security realm, which is typically nonpartisan, bipartisan nature issues, outside of our borders to keep Americans safe. Just to walk the halls, the architecture, the people who had walked there before you decades ago, really eerie. Just to, late nights, not easy work, long days. You get in very early, you get out very late, so you don't see a lot of sunlight around the building. But really, just an incredible experience, and to work with people who are detailed from all around government, career civil servants, from all the different agencies. From the military services, just an incredible place to work in the National Security Council.
Incredible.
Fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating. And Rich, you were just talking when we sort of started the conversation about your time when you took the oath, and it was while you were working for then Congressman Mark Kirk. You talked about how it was almost a natural progression of service to service. So I know you don't separate out in your head, in your life, your civilian life and your military life. Obviously, it's a different uniform. It requires a little bit more of an attention to detail, which buttons you're buttoning and making sure everything is crisp and all that good stuff. But how has your military service contributed to and from your civilian positions and opportunities, as Robert just said, and across many different positions?
Yeah, it's been incredibly helpful to me. It's kind of funny. So my major in college, I had a double major, but my primary one was broadcast journalism, also political science. But a journalism degree actually prepares you very well for a job as an intelligence officer. And both of those preparations are really great if you're going to be a staff member for a politician, an elected official, a governor, or even a national figure, because you're being asked to do very similar work products. You have to take a lot of information that's coming at you very fast, distill that into very concise, clear summaries, give the policymaker or the ranking officer, whoever it is that you're staffing, the information that they need to make key decisions, and be prepared to answer questions or do follow-up, research if you don't know the answer. That's what reporters do as journalists. That's what intelligence officers and analysts do in the intelligence community. And that's what staffers do, whether you're on Capitol Hill or in Springfield or City Hall. And so having that opportunity to really do that, have great training in it, to take all this raw intelligence that's coming in from around the world, understand what is real, what is not real, what do people need to know about, how do you synthesize it, how do you analyze it, how do you put it into an intelligence briefing, practice briefing senior officers who need this information. You know, when you're somebody who's walked around Capitol Hill and been around senators and congressmen, you know, you think you have a big ego and you can take on anything. And then as a junior officer, you walk into a briefing room with a commanding general and you're asked to give a briefing as this junior officer, and there's all these senior officers looking at you, you melt very quickly. And so it's a humbling experience, and you try to take that humility and all the lessons from service and bring that into your civilian job when you can.
And I have to ask, Rich, is there, of all of the different things that we've talked about, including your role as Deputy Chief of Staff to Senator Kirk, Chief of Staff to Governor Rauner, Director at the National Security Council in the White House, is there any, this perhaps the hardest question I'm going to ask tonight, what was your favorite role? What was your favorite position?
Can I say it was being an intelligence officer in the U.S. Navy?
I love it.
I love it. Yes.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. This is actually my favorite thing about being in the military, especially as a reservist who has a public life many times. When you walk into a room of your fellow sailors or soldiers, airmen, Marines, you're not the governor's chief of staff. You're not the Capitol Hill staffer. You're not, the hotshot lawyer who is sitting there from a big corporation, or the banker, or the teacher, or all the different kinds of people from all walks of life who I've had a privilege of serving with. You're just Commander Goldberg or Lieutenant so-and-so, or Sergeant so-and-so. That's who you are. That's your identity. And what you do, your work product, your work ethic, how you carry yourself, your military bearing, that is how you are judged. And, nobody comes in with some sort of scales because of their background, their wealth, anything like that. Everyone has the same level playing field, and the world's your oyster to succeed or not. It's up to you if you want to take it and do it. And it's an incredible feeling. And I think only people who serve, understand that. This family of the military, where you don't have to care about anything else. When you're in that moment with your fellow service members, it's a bond, it's a relationship that few can relate to.
No, I totally agree. And I just was talking to some of my former Marine buddies, my lifelong buddies. Some of your best friends will come from your service, and they're like family at that point, or they are family. So we're a band of brothers. And, for me, one of the things that I always look at in the people that have been role models for me, I'm always looking at not what they can gain for themselves, but how have they served others. And a lot of our guests, you'll see, Richard, are experts in serving others, and that's why they are who they are. So, and that's why I believe you are who you are. And if you had to speak on who your role models were to inspire you to be the person you have become, who would you say?
So I would say there's sort of the national level people who you grew up thinking about, that as you're serving, you think about, especially in the Navy. I'll pick some Navy folks.
Sure.
John McCain is obviously a hero and a role model to me, especially after you go through service and you understand these things. Things he went through, no one can understand except those who went through it. But the idea that he came from privilege, that he was captured, tortured, offered early release, and he wouldn't break from his men. He stayed there when he could have come home. Just the selflessness, the sacrifice, the courage, and the fortitude that took is obviously something that is something within me that I take with me and use as a role model. But also role models are the people who you actually have worked with in your own life, and you have good commanding officers and you have okay commanding officers. Of course, for anybody who's watching, all of mine have been great. But one in particular, I'll never forget him, Captain Paler. He was a commanding officer up in Fort Sheridan for a European Command unit a few years ago. He flew in from Minneapolis for his duty every month to lead a group of 100 sailors and soldiers and airmen from around the Midwest in the service. He was a high school teacher by day and served his country and deployed for his country by night. Beautiful family. And it just, was an amazing kind of feeling of, the citizen sailor, citizen soldier type of person who really cares about his community and cares about others, always took care of all the people in the unit, cared about what we were going through, knew the names of our family members, and didn't have to do that as a commanding officer. But those are the people you remember, and you try to emulate them as you go forward as a leader.
Wow. Yeah. For me, it was Staff Sergeant Henderson, or Gunny Henderson, when he retired in the Marine Corps as an enlisted guy. But I totally understand that. And what would you say, Richard? Because I feel like I could call you up, as a fellow Illinoisan and get some advice, career advice, or, just advice in life in general. So if I was a young 17-year-old kid, which I was, considering I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, didn't know if I was going to college, didn't know if I wanted to go to the military, but it was on the table. And I called you up and I said, Richard, I don't know what I'm going to do. Can you help me out? Would you recommend me going to the service? How would you advise a young 17-year-old Robert?
Yeah, I think that I'd want to know more about, what it is that you want to do. What is it that is your passion? What turns you on? Do you know where you're going? Do you have an idea of where you want to go? Are there skills you're looking to acquire? Where do you want to be in the 10 years? Those kind of questions. And for a lot of people, it is the right move, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it. And I think having those conversations and doing the research and making sure you're sure you want to make that commitment is very important, because it is a commitment. It's your life. We have wars that keep going on, and if you go into the military service, you should expect that you will serve in one of those conflicts. But at the same time, the rewards of service, the self-improvement, the capacity to grow as a human being, as a leader, the experience and skills that you can take into the civilian workforce after military service, if you don't want to make it a career, can be invaluable for people. But I think I want to talk to that person. I want to know exactly what their choices are in front of them, what their opportunities are, and make sure they make a very good educated choice. And military service should always be on the table.
Great answer. I'd be like, okay, I'm going. Nice.
And Richard, what we say frequently on the podcast, and I think all three of us probably have these conversations regularly with people that we know, is that you don't need to put on the uniform to serve. I know, Richard, you served as the chief of staff to Governor Rauner, and you were the chief of staff. You were responsible for working with many government agencies and folks that have committed themselves to public service of some kind. That is huge. That is tremendous. And right now, in this era of COVID, there's so many people that are putting themselves out there to serve as frontline workers. In healthcare, mail carriers, whatever the case may be. Service, volunteerism is really important. Richard, you've sort of worn it on both sides. You've worn it in your military service, as well as dedicating decades to public service in Capitol Hill, in Springfield, in the White House. Really, really, really important. But I cannot emphasize enough, and we'll continue to emphasize this in every conversation. It doesn't matter where you serve, but step up. And hopefully our conversations inspire those that are listening or watching. By the way, I highly recommend watching, so you could see the funny looks on Robert's face every time I say the word Army. It's kind of entertaining. There we go. If you were listening to the podcast right now, you would not have known what just happened. So subscribe on YouTube. There we go. But Richard, as we start to wrap up, perhaps the most important question that I have of you is, you and I have known each other. It's funny, I actually bumped into Rabbi Mccain at Mariano's this morning. So you and I grew up in the same neck of the woods in Skokie, and faith, I know, has played a major part of who you are. I know family plays a major part of who you are. How does faith and family remain a priority as a busy professional and individual dedicated to service?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a major source of inspiration. It's why I do everything to try to improve the world for the next generation. And so I think that my faith, guides me in my values, and I take those values with me to public service to try to make the world a better place, to make sure that we treat people with respect and look out, for other people who may not have the same opportunities we have, to preserve human dignity, defend freedom, and our democracy. But I will share one anecdote. When I was in Afghanistan, I was a certified Jewish lay leader for the Bagram Airfield Chapel. And I was there over the high holidays on the Jewish calendar, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot. And I had the opportunity to lead services for Yom Kippur evening, Kol Nidre. And it was an amazing experience. I had gone to Friday night services, Shabbat services throughout my time there, and you usually see maybe 5 to 10 people show up for some kosher MREs around the table. But when it came to Yom Kippur, we had, I think, 30 different people, not just Americans, multinational, from around the world coming, all different services out of the woodwork to be part of that and to lead Jewish service members from different nationalities, different services in a theater, front line in the war. At that moment was just an inspiration to help people with their faith while they were away from home in theater. So just a great memory for me, inspirational, both as a Jewish American, but as a service member to be able to reflect on.
Nice. Yeah, you know what? And I just want to tell you, man, that your service to our country, to our communities, continued service to our country and communities should and always be commended. And everything that you're going to do in the future, I'm sure will, and I don't know how, but I'm sure it's going to be on another level than even the White House because of why you're doing it, not where you're doing it. It comes from the heart. It comes from your upbringing, your faith, your family. And so your intentions are what drive the best things about us as human beings. So I'll say this as my last question for you, Richard. With all that you've done, and you've done a lot, you've done quite a bit, what's next, man? I mean, are we running for president in 2024? Are we? I mean, the next time you step in the White House, in what capacity will that be?
I don't know. My wife likes it in Chicago, so I don't know if I'm allowed back in Washington anytime soon. But listen, I'm very focused on raising a family and trying to enjoy that for a little bit here. My heart is in public service, and so that's going to continue in some capacity at some point. I don't know what that will be. But I think everyone should always have their antenna up and look for opportunities to serve, not just to do it, not just to have it on your resume, but to see if you can make an impact and make a difference to make this country, to make your community, to make the world a better place, because that's what we need, more people with those kind of motivations.
Agreed. Great answer, by the way.
Well, Richard, we very much appreciate you coming on and sharing why you serve, because ultimately we all serve, and really inspirational message. And I think we're going to continue to hear a lot from you. I know in your current capacity, you are helping many organizations. both professionally, but I know that personally too. I know that you are involved and continue to be an advisor, formally and informally, and obviously your Naval Reserve service continues. So thank you for your continued service. We'll look forward to checking back with you here on We All Serve. And again, thank you for all that you continue to do, and thank you for sharing some of your inspirations with all those that have tuned in.
And thank you both for your service.
Thank you, Richard. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Richard. And as we wrap up, again, make sure you are clicking subscribe wherever you are hearing this podcast, so you don't miss another episode. Robert, it's been quite a ride. This is episode number 6. And we have so many more in store for the upcoming weeks. In fact, we were just talking, I believe we have 20 or 25 different guests essentially lined up over the coming weeks and months ahead. Mm-hmm. So, ultimately, to all of you, we all serve, and thank you for continuing to spend a half hour or an hour with us wherever you might be tuning in.
We all serve. Thank you. See you next time.